Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Inside the Game with Coach Jim and Coach John Blomstrann. And we got a special guest tonight. It's Ryan Carr, who was a goalkeeper at University of Hartford back my day there. And since then, Ryan was the strength and conditioning coach at Hartford, Princeton, Iona College, and Seton Hall. And he since has gotten into high performance training. He's at Barton Health in Baja, California, and he's got his own business called Carr Driven Performance. Ryan, thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Glad to be here, guys.
Okay. So, Ryan, tonight's show is going to be a little bit different than the others. But first, we want to ask you, because I know you still do some goalkeeping training. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's in the blood. That'll always be there.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so one of the questions we always ask is what advice you would give to a young player, to say a young goalkeeper who wants to travel that path and become very good.
Did you say a coach or player?
Start off with the player, okay?
Player.
Okay. Yeah, I would say for a player, number one is be passionate about what you're doing. If you're not passionate about the sport, find a different sport, because passion is going to take you so far. That's going to lead right into motivation. That's going to lead into your work ethic. So make sure that you are just passionate about the sport and you're doing it because you love it for your own reasons, not for anybody else, not for parents, not for other coaches, but focus on what you absolutely love doing and go full throttle on that.
Tell us a little bit, Ryan, how you decided to be a goalkeeper rather than a field player.
Yeah, I think just as a kid, I was the youngest on the block, and I had an older brother, and they all played soccer, so they need somebody to go in goal. So they just threw me in there, and I kind of had a reckless, wild side to me that I just embraced, and I love diving on the ground and getting dirty, and I think it just started with that, and then I just had some amazing and some role models that showed me the way. So it was pure, it was raw, it was passionate. So yeah, it just started naturally.
Nice. I have a funny story I want to share. I recruited Ryan to Hartford, and I went down to Fort Dix to a big tournament to watch. I'd seen him play on video, and I wanted to see him play in person. And Ryan, tell us a little bit about that, what happened and what you thought was going on and everything.
Sorry, the end kind of broke up for me. You're asking me to tell you a little bit about.
Yeah, when I went down to see you play, but you were injured. Yeah, we've got a really bad connection. I'm going to ask you, Ryan, and we'll hold the fort for you. I'm going to ask you to turn all that off and come back on your iPhone, okay?
Okay, cool. I'll try my phone. I'll be right back.
Okay, sounds good. And we'll carry on until you get back. Okay. Yeah, we still haven't quite figured out this platform yet. I know Ryan's on vacation in Arizona right now, something like that. So, John, I got a question for you. Have you seen the Olympic team play?
Or
the national team?
In this qualifying phase, I've seen them play. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think about the level compared to back in our day?
I I think across the board, there's more technical ability, a little more polished technical ability, and maybe a little more game experience, probably. But I will say it, the national team's been on too. Like, I think we played Northern Ireland today, and some of the stars are in that group and not on this Olympic qualifying group. But but a lot of the stars are crossover players because they're young enough to do both. Jason Pulisic even said he wanted to play in the Olympics if he had a chance.
Yeah.
I don't know if he will, but
the national team, I think, is awesome. I mean, I've been watching them. I saw them play Jamaica last week, and then Ireland today, Northern Ireland, and they really are deep. They have a lot of good players, and I think more depth. We've had good players before, for sure, but depth of talent right now is, to me, very exciting.
Yeah, and then at such a young age too.
Yeah. Well, we got guys playing for, McKennie's playing at Juventus, and Reina's playing at Dortmund, and Pulisic is struggling to get in at Chelsea at the moment, but he's played plenty. And so these guys are, seasoned. They're already seasoned pros in a way.
Yeah, and I remember seeing that kid Josh Sargent years ago, and he's still good, and he's playing over in Europe somewhere too, right?
Yeah, he's playing in Germany. Yep.
Yeah. He had a nice assist in an Olympic qualifying game where he faked a defender way at the baseline that he was going to turn back away from goal. Defender bit the fake, and then he went baseline and just played a ball across that was tapped in. It was really nice.
Very good. Yeah, it's exciting. I hope we can. I think we still, don't have a ton of experience qualifying for things necessarily. Here comes Ryan again. So let's see how it goes. Hey, Ryan.
How's that?
Hey, there we go. We had
no delay.
Some old-fashioned tape delay. I don't know if maybe the StreamYard thought you were going to start cussing or something, So we're better now, I think.
Okay.
Is that any better for you guys or no? I'm still breaking up on your end.
Okay.
Yeah, you're still freezing a little bit. Yeah.
That's okay. Well, let's give it a shot.
All right, we'll give it a try.
Okay. So you had your career as a goalkeeper, and then you got into strength and conditioning, and you were at some top places. What is it that drew you to the strength and conditioning career?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think I saw such an immediate impact in my game as soon as I really started tapping into tried and true strength conditioning principles. So I saw my body. I'll never forget going from my sophomore year, or freshman to sophomore year, one of those. And I remember coming out for a breakaway, and I had just gotten to the ball 5 yards sooner than I ever thought I might. And it was because all the work I had done the previous year and during the summer preparing for that, doing a lot of speed, agility, quickness, as well as strength training. So I just saw some huge benefits. And then I just wanted to help people have those same benefits as well.
I remember those times I remember that you made a difference in between your freshman and sophomore year that was remarkable. And you were pretty mature as a freshman physically, I thought. You jumped right in and were a starting player from day one, and against some very good teams. But the difference when you came back your sophomore year was like night and day. And then also,
I remember that.
Yeah. And another thing, when Asaf Lubetsky came back to be the assistant, your goal kicks improved by about 20 meters in between when he left and when he came back. He couldn't believe it. And he says, how did that happen? I said, the kid's been working at it, and it really impacted him as a coach, because I think until then he he just thought in many cases either the player had it or he didn't have it. And it really taught him that, hey, if we work with somebody and we work on things, we can really improve.
I have a
absolutely.
follow-up
A lot
question
of
to
help
that,
there
Ryan.
from.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I
sure.
didn't mean to interrupt. But
No,
since
go
you've
on.
been at strength and conditioning for a number of years now, could you talk a little bit about the sort of evolution of the latest science and how you've changed what you've tried to work with athletes? As it seems like things are different all the time and better all the time with strength and conditioning.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. I think there's principles that stand the test of time, such as progressively overloading, right? So if I'm lifting 5 pounds today and I do it, and then next week I try and do 6, and then the following week I try and do 7, So I think those principles of progressively overloading the body, number one, keeping the athletes safe and doing no harm, and making sure that the exercises we're doing have some substance behind them. There's a lot in the field that is quite frankly garbage. So I think sticking to the principles of progressively overloading, safety, but then there's some fantastic new things that are coming out in training with heart rate variability. Even just the recovery side of it has come so far when it comes to sleep and nutrition and mental performance, which we'll get into. So I think the training aspect of it, there's a lot of things that are non-negotiables to me, and that's moving well and having the correct movement patterns before we overload it, before we load it. So if somebody's doing a bodyweight squat and it's not right, or their knees diving in or something doesn't look great, we should not load that movement until it looks like it should for that person. And that's going to be different for everybody. I've trained 7'2" basketball players. I've trained 4'11" squash players, and everyone in between. So I think it's understanding what good movement looks like, and then what good movement looks like for that person, because we all have different limb lengths and angles that we move at. So yeah, that's important. Understand the individual.
Before we go any further, I want you to look at the screen. We have our guest, Alon Betsky, who's very good friends with Ryan. They were teammates at Hartford. So Alon's trying to be funny here, I think.
Yeah,
right?
Good to see you, Alon.
Alon, we're glad you're here. And then my old friend Mike McFarland always joins in. So we'll get people on, probably some more Hawks,
There we go.
We'll introduce them when they come on. But those are great points, Ryan. I'm at a little school called Thomas College. It's a great little school in D3, and it's all the kids. A lot of the kids there are first generation college kids. A lot of blue collar kids, so they have a great work ethic. But in many cases, they've never done any type of, say, resistance training before,
Yeah, sure.
and they want to carry the heavy load right away, and it's it's so important to get it right. It isn't important how much you're lifting so much as you're getting the movement correctly. That's how injuries occur. And the other thing that I've always found interesting as a college coach, you touched on it, and I know you're going to touch on it some more, is nutrition and sleep. So many athletes will just work themselves, silly in the weight room, but then they won't eat correctly and they don't sleep enough, and they don't understand that these three things are equal. The weight training isn't more important than the other two. Without the proper nutrition and sleep, the weight training is a bit of a waste of time in many cases. So that's a guy, the trainer at Tufts, wrote a book about this called Under the College Jersey, and it was a good book. And I read the whole book. I don't know if you ever read it or not.
I like that title, though. I like where he's going with that.
Yeah. So the funny part is, the book's this thick, and I read the whole thing. Basically, he said, drink a lot of water and get a lot of sleep. And his athletes at Tufts bought in. They'd never won a national championship in anything. And in his 10 years there, they won like 6.
Oh, wow.
Men's soccer bought in. They've won 3 since they bought in.
Yeah.
And they never won anything before.
That's amazing.
And they all drink a gallon of water a day, and they all get 9 hours of sleep every night.
Yep.
And because the other stuff, everyone's doing the other stuff in college. And,
the basics are so important. And I feel like not everybody, but a lot of people, they're looking for the quick fix. They're looking for the magic pill. They're looking for the next sexiest app, the next sexiest tool, and they don't have the basics down. It doesn't matter how great of a tool you have if you're not getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and if you're not fueling yourself prior to competition, and you're not preparing your mind, and you're not refueling afterwards. So until you nail those, I don't have time for the other fancy things and gadgets.
I see.
That's great. That's great. So when you were at these colleges, did you work with a variety of athletes, or did you always work with soccer, or how did that go?
Yeah, great question. A variety. Soccer was always men's and women's soccer. I worked with, I think almost at every university that I was at in some capacity. I always had my hand in soccer, but I worked with every sport from squash to swimming, diving, water polo, football, you name it. And I think I've probably worked with it, which is great because you learn a ton as a coach. And I always love that variety of the different cultures that a men's water polo team brought in at 11 a.m. And then at 12 noon, you might have the golf team walk in, then you train football for 3 hours, which is a totally different animal. So I loved that variety. And I think that's really ultimately what led me to being fascinated with training athletes' mindset more than anything. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so important. Let's move forward to that because it's interesting. I saw some of your stuff online, and I knew you were heading in that direction a few years ago, and I've been doing the same on a smaller scale, just with the Thomas kids, and it's been really fascinating because I wish I knew this stuff when I was a player and when I was a younger coach. I was just like all the other coaches. 80% of what goes on with an athlete happens from the neck up, and I trained 95% of the time from the neck down. And now I have the ratio is a lot better. But some of the guys, they you can tell them all you want, and you can give them numbers and tell them that all the top pros are doing the mental workouts every day, and some of them, they're just not going to do it, and yet they'll go lift weights for 3 hours every day, and thinking that that's going to be it, and then that same guy might choke in the game, and he doesn't address that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yep.
So kind of talk us through how you made the transition.
Yeah, well, I think it stemmed from the question you asked earlier of I just became really fascinating watching different athletes walk in from all over the world, and different cultures, especially in the soccer world. We're so diverse, which is a beautiful thing. But I watched so many different athletes playing different sports, struggling with similar issues. And the biggest ones that came up were confidence, mental toughness, consistency, being resilient in the face of adversity. So I found that I could address some of that through strength conditioning. We could work on the mental toughness and the work ethic. But I realized if I wanted to truly help my athletes, there's 3 things they can train: their sport, whether that's basketball, soccer, whatever it might be. They can train in the weight room or conditioning wise, and the last is their mind. And most people train 2 out of the 3. So to me, that's just like what you said. It's kind of insane that we think that we're getting all of this mental training through strength conditioning, through the sport itself. And I think to a certain extent we do get some, but there's a whole world in the science of sport and performance psychology out there. And it's just that, it's a science. It's research based. It's very rigorously tested. And it's only really being used a lot at the top levels, mostly at the Olympic levels and now in professional sports. And it's starting to bleed its way into the college game, which I'm excited about. But I look at it as like strength and conditioning 30 or 40 years ago. You know, if I were to ask you two, what was your strength and conditioning program when you guys were playing college ball?
Push-ups and sit-ups.
Right?
Push-ups and sit-ups in my dorm room.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought I could just give my athletes an edge if I was better trained in that. So when I was at Seton Hall as a strength coach, I think I was probably 28, and I saw they had a master's degree in sport and performance psychology. So I was like, sign me up. So I did that. I graduated, I don't know, 2015 or 16. And then just been on that path ever since. And then about a year and a half ago, I decided to go back to get a doctorate degree in it because I'm just hungry for it and I want to help my athletes more. So that's kind of where the journey has started as a coach. As a player, I can tell you it started from the worst 4 days of my life. And that was, I was a senior in college at the University of Hartford, go Hawks. And I got invited to the Major League Soccer Combine. And it was a dream come true to have that opportunity. I was one of 64 people selected to go play out in Los Angeles, California. And the closer the date got, the less I could sleep, the worse my eating was. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My legs felt heavy. I landed there and I felt like super slow. I was playing the worst soccer I ever had. And at the end of those 4 days, I could not wait to be done. And I completely just choked. And I'll never forget this moment. I walked from Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach. I walked like 10 miles that day, just asking myself one question: why? Like, why did this happen? Why, after training, being on elite level clubs, playing Division I, full ride, why did this happen in the biggest moment of my life? And I couldn't answer that question right there, but I think I've been on a journey ever since. And the reason why is because I was meant to learn about sport and performance psychology so that it doesn't happen to anybody that I work with, and I can help push this field forward. So I'm super passionate about not making it a separate field, but embedding it into college athletics, professional athletics, youth athletics, and making it a part of the way that we coach. Because at the end of the day, I'm a coach first.
That's fantastic. That's a great story. And you know, I shared with Ryan when we had a little test run on Friday. I didn't make it 4 days. I tried out back when I was young. We had indoor pro teams, and we had one in Hartford called the Hartford Hellions. And I tried out for the team, and a lot of the guys there, I'd played with them and against them, and I was better than them. Okay, I don't know if I was in the top 10, but I was a good player. And I get in this tryout, and I couldn't pass the ball 5 yards accurately or with the proper pace. I was drilling balls at guys, you know, from 5-10 yards away. And it was because mentally I was gone. I was so worried about getting cut. That's all I could think about was, what are you going to do if you get cut? You don't have a job. This is what you're meant to do. And I couldn't do it. The same thing happened to me. And I've heard it happen to a lot of guys, you know. So that's awesome that you've gone into this, and you're already making a big difference. You're going to make a huge difference for so many people.
Thanks.
That's really good.
Ryan, I have a question. As Jim said, we have an older audience usually because of our age. And I remember quite a ways back when we didn't have all these cable TV networks and stuff, everybody still watched the Olympics. And the Olympics, There was this high jumper named Fosbury. And he would stand there and look at the high jump bar. And mentally, you could see him practicing like every stride to the bar, and then the flop, because he did it backwards, and it was really the first introduction for a lot of us of sort of mental visualization and rehearsal.
Yeah.
And is that still a thing for all athletes, like to
Oh
sort
yeah,
of
absolutely.
train your positive thoughts of how things will go before you get into it? Because that's when I first saw it, actually.
Yeah, so imagery is such a powerful tool when it comes to just performing at a higher level. And the best way you can think of it is if you're going to a stadium to play a game and you've never been to that stadium, but maybe like you can look up some pictures online or something like that so you can get a little bit of a feel of it. You just get reps in before you're ever even there. And you're able to get more quality reps in, especially. So sometimes you might break the images down even slower. So it's in slow mo, and then you can kind of piece it back together and speed it up. So what we really want to do is include not just our mind's eye, but all of our senses. So we think about from the top down, like you want to notice what you hear. So maybe you notice the sound of the crowd as you run onto the field, right? And you want to smell the grass or the AstroTurf or the popcorn in the stands if you're playing in a stadium, right? So get your hearing, get your smelling, your olfactory in there. You want to taste. So some people, they chew like maybe the same bubble gum when they play. So chew that bubble gum. You want to feel, so tactilely, like feel your jersey on you as you're visualizing this. And then obviously you want to see it. So yeah, imagery is such a powerful tool. And a lot of the athletes I work with right now in South Lake Tahoe, California, they're skiers, they're snowboarders, they're rock climbers. So the consequences for failure does not mean you just lose a game or a competition. Sometimes it can be, very serious when it comes to injury or even worse. So they use imagery all the time when it comes to performing at their best, especially individual athletes. There's a lot of pressure when it comes to that. So I think it can give you more confidence. It can make you feel like you've been there before. So when you actually physically arrive, it's like, I've done this thing 10,000 times in my head. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really interesting. It's something that we're going over with the guys at Thomas right now, but not nearly in the detail you just described. So I just learned a lot right there. So we have a 5-step process that I stole from Dr. Selk. And the first one's a centering breath. The second is the identity statement. So it might not be true, but it's what I want to be true. So like if I was a number 9, I'm the best number 9 in college soccer, even though I'm not. But we can believe, our mind can believe lies we tell it. So we do that. The personal highlight reel, which you just talked about. Then we do the identity statement again. Then we do the centering breath again. And it's proven that people that do these things will improve like 7 times faster than if they don't do them.
Absolutely.
So it's, pun intended, it's a no-brainer that you should do this, And, guys like LeBron and Cristiano, they do this every day.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think what that does, I love the practice that you just mentioned there, because it starts with the breath, and the breath is incorporated throughout. And so much of our experiences when we fail happen not because of not being able to perform in the present moment, like Coach Jim, what you said about not being able to pass the ball 5 yards. You played with those same guys, right? The ball was the same size. Maybe the context was different. Maybe there were scouts there watching you. But we're so worried about what might happen in the future, like not making that team. And for myself, not getting a contract, or fear of failure in front of other people. Or we're worried about what happened 5 minutes ago because I turned the ball over, or I missed a easy sitter, or the ball went through my hands or my legs, right? That we're not in the present moment. And when we are in the zone or in flow state, whatever you want to call it, when you have had that game when moments just seem to slow down, it seems easy, you could run for days, that's flow state or being in the zone. that's because you're present in this moment, and using your breath is such a powerful tool for that.
That's great. I'm going to interrupt again because we've got Alon. On a more serious note, Ryan's the best teammate anyone can ask for. Great person and great professional.
Thanks,
And
man.
one of my favorite guys, Nitalanza. I agree, Alon. Ryan's smart and works hard. I learned a lot when I was his teammate. Always stayed after to take extra shots. No shortcuts with Captain Ryan. I always knew you'll be great, Ryan. And by the way, Nitzel is great as well. He's got his own business. He makes prosthetics, prosthetic limbs.
Unbelievable. So cool.
And just doing a great job. So I'm very proud of him. Thanks, Nitzel.
Yeah, thank you guys. That's extremely humbling.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting too. The other thing I want to ask you about, and I'm also coaching track and field, and it's not an area of my expertise. I ran track in high school. The only thing I got going for me is my 800-meter time is faster than most of the kids on the team's 800-meter time. So I have a little bit of credibility.
There you go.
They looked at me and they're going, "Are you sure you ran that?" I'm like, "Yeah, believe it or not, I did." But we talk a lot about the inner voice, the inner coach, because track and field, a lot like golf, there's a lot of time. The athlete has a lot of time on their hands at a meet, waiting, and boy, you can talk yourself out of anything, can't you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, talk a little bit about
I've worked
that.
with. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because self-talk is such a powerful tool for the better or for the worse. And any sport that has more time on their hands that is definitely more mentally challenging. So think of like baseball, golf, etc. It's grueling, because if you're having a bad day, it can turn really bad very quickly. So self-talk, a couple things, like you mentioned, having that mantra, just that go-to is so important. Something as simple as "I've got this," or "next play," or "here now." Just having a staple that you can go back to, I think, is really important. Also, understanding when you get off kilter, and snapping yourself back in. So having something physically that you do, like it might be you have a rubber band on your hand when you're playing. There you go, boom. or like you brush your shoulder off, right? Or just having something physical. Maybe you just like rub your hands. You do like this, like go away. That's a really powerful tool to also put beside of your mantra when you're kind of going down that rabbit hole. So for instance, I might be sitting there, and goalkeepers are notoriously known for this. There's a lot of time in the game when you're not, quote unquote, doing anything. You don't have the ball at your feet, not making a save. You might be communicating with the balls at the other end. It's easy to let that chatter come in. So if I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, my feet feel so heavy today, I really did a bad job with that last back pass, and I'm going down the rabbit hole, I can simply do that physical action, snap the bracelet, fix my gloves. Then I say, "Here now," and then I'm back in the present moment. So having a routine is really important, or a ritual to do with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Here's a question for you, Ryan. Like all good teams or any team, you have certain players like LeBron James or James Harden that you don't need to do anything with mentally, but you also have players you're counting on who might not be able to keep their confidence under the, most harsh competitive conditions.
Yeah.
And an example that people in Connecticut know about recently is Kristen Williams on UConn women's soccer has had some real struggles with shooting even this season. And then they just played Iowa, and she was tremendous. She was better than Paige Beckers and better than Caitlin Clark, the two freshman phenoms. And it's like, I'm sure Gino and his coaching staff had something to do with helping that athlete sort of go from underconfidence to now a better place mentally under severe competition. In that case, it's the best women's basketball in the country.
Yeah.
So do you find that in your profession, there's a way to sort of deal with the bottom half of the team in soccer instead of the top half? Because as Jim and I know, we always had players at UConn that never lost their confidence.
Yeah.
But I wasn't one of them, for instance.
That's a really good question. And I think it comes back to looking at players as people first. And this is where the deeper work really does come in. We could sit here and talk about performance all day, and we could talk about LeBron James, but if something tragic or catastrophic happened in his life, or he got a terrible night of sleep, his performance could be compromised very easily. And we could say that for any player, right? So I think understanding, when I'm coaching people, I look at them when they walk in the door as a person first, knowing that if they just broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, that might impact their performance today. If they didn't eat breakfast, if they had a bad night of sleep, all these things can impact us. So I think checking in with them, like with the female basketball player you talked about, my first question is, hey, how are you doing? Like, I don't care about basketball. How are you as a person doing? And let's figure out what's going on there first. Okay, if we have that sorted out and to a standard that's, at least equilibrium, like we're doing okay, we're at homeostasis, then I think that's when we look at, a lot of times the performance might dip because we're trying to overperform and we don't know ourselves as well as an athlete. We're trying to dribble too much when our best game is passing, or we're trying to shoot too much when our best game is passing. So I think understanding what got us there in the first place and playing to our strengths is absolutely critical. And that's where the field of like positive psychology comes in. And the field can be simplified as focusing on your strengths and making those as good as possible. And then your weaknesses, let's just get them good enough. Let's just get them just good enough. And here's an example. So I had a hockey player I was working with, and the kid he was really into cinematography. He was going to go to college for it, loved just everything technology and cinematography, and his skating wasn't the best. So I sat down with him and I'm like, hey, so what's going on? I'm not as fluid on the ice as the other players. I'm working on it, but it's just not coming. I'm like, well, what do you love doing in life? And we came upon cinematography, and I'm like, okay, so what players have you been watching? And he's like, well, none. I'm like, well, you love being on YouTube. You love watching movies and all of these things. So why not tap into your strength of cinematography and technology? Who's your favorite player? We found that out. And then we started watching videos of them. And then he just started to look at that. And then it helped his skating as well. So I think let's tap into our strengths as much as possible, because that's going to bring about energy, enthusiasm, and motivation, rather than only focusing on our weaknesses. Like if you guys were to run a practice with 3 of your players and all you did was work on their weakness for a week straight, they might not have that much fun. But if you kind of sandwich it in there, you do something they love doing, and then you work on their weakness by tapping into their strengths, and then, finish off with something they're really enjoying, I think we're going to find a lot more motivation and joy there.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great recipe. When I was at UConn, I was a phys ed major, and I took the very first sports psychology course ever offered, according to the professor in New England, and maybe further. And the guy, he was a great guy. And he said, there was only one book out, Ogilvy and Tutko.
Yeah,
it was the only book. And this guy was awesome because he said, listen, I don't know any more than you do. We're going to learn this together and let's enjoy it. And his name was Bob Rotella. And he has been the golf guru to some of the biggest time golfers. He's written a number of books. He left UConn and became a professor at UNC Chapel Hill.
Oh, wow.
And I've read like 5 of his books. He's like really famous in the golf world.
Yeah, they're all three of those names that you just mentioned are
Yeah.
huge in the
Yeah.
sports performance
And
psychology
so-
world. Well,
So it was
respected.
interesting because when I knew Doc Rotella, first he wasn't a doc yet. You
Yeah,
know, he was working on that. And he was
That's
just
cool.
the most humble guy. And his big thing was positive self-talk. And so I got a dose of that very early, you know, in my life. And it helped me a lot. I forgot all about it when I tried out for that protein, but
Yeah, you and me both.
And another thing that worked for me as an athlete, I'm sorry, I'm going back to Kristen Williams, but what they did is they assigned her the most difficult defensive task on the other team. And by succeeding with her
Yeah.
defending, it helped her shot, and she got sort of her shooting stroke back. And I remember personally, baseball versus soccer. I like soccer because there were so many little battles you could win and so much you could sort of accomplish by just hustle and effort that you didn't have to stand there and think about the error you made like 5 minutes ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah,
for
that's
her,
a great
concentrating
point.
on stopping the other player sort of freed her mind to not worry about her shooting misses. Maybe that's common. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, that's a brilliant strategy, right? If one thing is not working for you, you know, if you're passing, say we're on the soccer pitch and you're passing, it's just like all over the place. Okay, how can we just work on our positioning as good as possible or our communication? I know as a goalkeeper, I would do that often, like kind of putting on my player hat here is if I just wasn't feeling it and I felt like my legs were slow and heavy and maybe I just didn't have a great touch on the ball. I would work on my communication as much as possible and I would connect with my back four and just really get that dialed in. And a lot of times that just switched my focus to something else. And I almost forgot that I wasn't maybe feeling that good on that particular day.
Yeah. That's good.
okay, so I put this up here, folks, because I went on, like I said, I don't know, it was a month or two ago. I happened to see Ryan's name out there, and I hadn't been in touch in a while, so I went on and looked at his information and some coaches and players, some fantastic information, just like he shared tonight, that's written down that you can keep, and definitely help you as a person. And like he said, first we're people, and I think sometimes when we're coaches, we forget that. We just think of them as players, and that's not going to cut it. There's a corny saying that's, I think, really true, and that is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And they're not going to buy into the plan if they think you're just using them because they're fast or because they can strike a ball or because they can hit a curveball or whatever. So, and it's much more rewarding coaching the whole person, and not only will you be more successful, but it's just more fun. It's more rewarding. When I talk to old, alums, we don't talk about, remember that game, this or that. We talk about something that happened in our lives, before or after it. And that's what we remember. So I highly recommend going on Ryan's page there and his website and everything and checking them out. And, it really helped me because I've been badgering one of my bosses to let me do this for a while, and with the COVID, things changed a lot, and mental health became a big issue, and so now he's all in to let me do it, and it's been really good. It's been really good to get to know the guys better, and I know they've enjoyed it. That we're not just asking them, how fit are you? Are you lifting? Are you doing this? We're talking about how are you? And they're much more open to us now. So
That's a great point, Coach. You said that beautifully. That was perfect. Yeah, let's focus on the people first.
Yeah, Jim, remember at Mohegan Sun, I don't know if you were there, but Glenn Meyernick, we all admired as a player.
Yeah.
And I think at the time he was an assistant national team coach or
Yeah.
something like that. And it's funny, you talk about COVID pandemic and the old days and hopefully what we'll get to. But I remember his simple advice at the end of a clinic was just touch base by actually putting your hand on every player's shoulder at the end of a practice, just for the same idea. Just besides whatever you're trying to teach them in the practice, you're just personally connecting in a simple way, either going out to practice or at the end with each player. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Awesome. So I think we're going to wrap it up. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. Are you still in Arizona or are you back in California now?
I'm back in California now. Yeah,
Okay.
I really appreciate you guys having me on, and thoroughly just enjoyed, connecting with both of you. And John, it's really nice to meet you. And
Yeah.
I love talking with fantastic coaches. And yeah, this is really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice to meet you too, Ryan.
Yeah. Well, keep up the good work, and I'm gonna keep my eye on you because I know you've already done great things, and you're destined to do some more. So, very proud of you, Ryan. And the story I was gonna say, by the way, before his feed wasn't good. I went down. I was going to go watch him play, but I already knew I wanted him because the video showed how good he was. And at a place like Hartford, every place probably, but at Hartford, I had a pretty good eye for talent, and I would get my heart broken because like they're ready to come, and then Penn State comes and offers them a scholarship, and so see you later. They're going to Penn State, So I'm like, I hope, I just hope nobody comes in for this kid. And Ryan hurt his shoulder. Was it your shoulder or your finger or something?
Yeah.
And so Ryan got hurt and he couldn't play in the tournament. And I was like, I remember telling Irma, hey, that kid that goalie I want got hurt. He's not going to play in the tournament. And she goes, oh, good. Nobody will steal him. And Ryan was afraid I wasn't going to take him because he was injured. I said, don't worry about it. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
So that was funny how that works sometimes. The player doesn't realize these things,
Yeah, well, it set me off on this path. So I can't thank you enough, Coach Evans. I say it to everyone. You got me on this path with that opportunity, and I am forever grateful for that.
Well, it's a two-way street, man. It was a pleasure being your coach. And one of the things I love about coaching is to see what guys are doing later, because, when you meet guys when they're 18, they do stupid stuff. And we all did, and, they still do. And then, but you see them grow through the years, and you see what just great people they are and how they impact their communities, and you've done that. So, like I said, I'm very proud of you, and keep up the great work, Ryan.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Jim, John. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on a minute. We got to go with this one. Mike Botteri, great to see you, Ryan. Good stuff, Coach. And then, that's nice. That's one of my former players. We're definitely grateful for Coach Jim Evans. Rodrigo Guzman and his brother Edgar, they're from Norwalk, Connecticut. They came from Columbia. And Rob just won the state championship at Brian McMahon at his old high school.
Nice.
And he took over that program about 4 or 5 years ago. They were terrible. They had been good, and they went all the way down, and he brought them all the way back. And he's one of the hardest working players I've ever had, and one of the hardest working men I've ever met.
Wow, that's awesome.
So, Rod,
Jim, did he have Ralph King as a coach?
Yes, he had Ralph King as a coach. That's right.
We knew Ralph King because he was like the co-director of Joe Maroney's soccer camp.
Yeah. Great man. Okay. Good night, everybody.
All right.
Good night. Thanks so much.